Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and really get to the core of things.
That's the goal.
Today, we're digging into something pretty foundational. 25, well, let's call them essential financial lessons from that famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Ah, yes, a book that really shook things up for a lot of people.
Totally. And look, this isn't just about, how to make more money. It's deeper. It's about fundamentally rethinking your whole relationship with wealth, work, financial freedom. The whole picture.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here is how this source immediately challenges the conventional wisdom most of us grew up hearing.
Right.
Our mission really in this deep dive is to pull out those key insights, give you a kind of strategic shortcut, if you will, to practical financial literacy, the kind that, frankly, you often don't get in traditional schooling.
Exactly. It aims to reframe your whole financial playbook, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, so Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it kicks off with this huge foundational shift. It's all about mindset first. Lesson 1, the rich don't work for money.
Yeah.
Now that sounds, well, it sounds almost paradoxical, right?
Huh?
Especially if you spent your life trading time for a paycheck.
It does sound counterintuitive at first glance, but the real insight here, it isn't just about, say, owning stocks or bonds. It's about shifting your whole perspective.
How so?
From trading your active labor, your time for money, to building systems, things that generate wealth, whether you're actively working on them at that moment or not.
So designing things that work for you.
Precisely. Designing a life where your income isn't directly tied hour by hour to your effort, that fundamentally changes your relationship with work, with time, with freedom, building something that produces value, even when you're sleeping.
That is a profound reorientation. Wow. And that connects directly to lesson 3, which is all about how mindset shapes wealth. Poor Dad, his line was always, I can't afford it.
The classic response.
Whereas Rich Dad, his immediate question was, okay, how can I afford it? And that's not just semantics, is it? It feels like a complete rewiring.
Oh, absolutely. It's a massive shift. You're moving from a mindset that's rooted in limitation, in scarcity, to one that's about active problem solving, about possibility.
So it's engaging your brain differently.
Exactly. That question, how can I afford it? It's not about encouraging reckless spending, not at all. It's about getting your mind working to find creative solutions, to spot opportunities, to figure out pathways to actually acquire what you desire or need.
Yeah.
That's the real starting point for financial freedom, isn't it? Not just wishing for things, but actively figuring out how.
Actively seeking. And it goes even deeper into our psychology. Lesson 5 talks about fear and desire controlling the poor, like the fear of being broke, or maybe the desire for immediate comfort, shiny new things.
Yeah, the instant gratification trap.
Right. And how that can keep people stuck in what the book famously calls the rat race. So Rich Dad's teaching here is, well, it's not just about managing money, is it? It's about managing your emotions first.
That's a huge piece of it. And if we look at lesson 20, don't be controlled by money, it really hammers this home.
Okay.
It points out that fear, whether it's the fear of losing the money you have or the anxiety about not earning enough, that fear often dictates the financial choices for, well, not just the poor, but the middle class too. So the core takeaway from the source is that true liberation, real financial freedom, it comes from learning to master money, your relationship with it, rather than letting it master you.
Being in the driver's seat.
Exactly. Being in control, not being constantly pushed around by fear or, unchecked desire.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that brings us nicely to the second big theme here. The absolute power of financial education and really truly understanding what assets are. Lesson 2 hammers this home. Financial education is true power.
Yeah, this is central.
We're taught in school how to, get a job, work for money, but rarely how money itself actually works. What specific areas does Rich Dad really stress are essential learning for anyone serious about wealth?
He really zeroes in on a few key things. Understanding accounting, like the language of business, investing, obviously, how markets work, and even the basics of corporate law.
Why law?
Because, he argues, without this foundational knowledge, it doesn't matter how much money you earn, it can just slip through your fingers because you don't understand the actual mechanisms of how wealth is built and, maybe more importantly, how it's protected.
Right, understanding the system from the inside.
From the inside out, yeah.
Okay, so building on that foundation, Rich Dad makes this critical distinction in lesson 4. Buy assets, not liabilities. Now, for someone listening who maybe already knows the basic definitions, what's the deeper layer here?
The profound insight, I think, is the relentless focus on cash flow. True assets, in this view, put money into your pocket regularly. Think cash flowing rental properties, dividend paying stocks, maybe royalties from intellectual property.
Okay, money coming in.
Exactly. Liabilities, on the other hand, take money out of your pocket. And the big challenge, the mindset shift, is that many things people think are assets, maybe their fancy car, the newest phone, sometimes even their primary home.
Uh-oh.
Well, in Rich Dad's framework, if they consistently drain cash for payments, insurance, upkeep, they're actually functioning as liabilities. It all comes down to which way the cash is flowing.
That distinction alone could change everything for someone.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you start piling up those true assets, you unlock lesson 8, the power of passive income. This sounds like the dream, right? Money while you sleep.
It's definitely appealing.
But beyond the dream, what are some of maybe the practical hurdles or the initial work Rich Dad points out that people often underestimate when trying to build these passive streams?
Well, it's not just about money magically appearing. It's about strategically decoupling your time from your earnings. That's the core idea.
Okay.
But for someone already savvy with finance, this pushes you to think about the quality of that passive income. Is it liquid? What are the tax implications? Can it scale? Whether it's income from, say, a REIT, or a digital course you created, or a rental portfolio.
So it's not always truly passive, especially at first.
Exactly. The source highlights the initial effort, the capital, the knowledge needed to set these things up. And often they need quite active management in the beginning before they become genuinely passive. It's not zero work forever.
Good point. And sticking with assets, lesson 15 throws down a gauntlet. Your house is not always an asset. Now, this cuts against a huge cultural belief, certainly in many places. How does Rich Dad's philosophy square this? Does he just dismiss home ownership?
Not dismiss it entirely, but views it through that same consistent lens, cash flow.
Okay.
If your primary home is consistently taking money out of your pocket each month, mortgage, property taxes, insurance repairs, then financially, functionally, it's acting as a liability.
Even if it goes up in value.
Right, because while it might appreciate over the long term, that appreciation isn't putting cash in your pocket today. It's unrealized potential, not active income. He clearly differentiates this from, say, an investment property you rent out, which is designed to generate positive cash flow. It's about the financial function, not the emotional attachment.
That's a cold, hard look at it, but financially logical.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just what you buy, but how you buy it. Lesson 18 talks about using debt wisely. Now, most people hear debt and think, bad, red flashing lights.
Absolutely. That has a bad rap, often for good reason.
So how does Rich Dad reframe it strategically?
He makes a very clear distinction. There's bad debt, like using high-interest credit cards for consumer goods, stuff that depreciates, that just pulls money away from you.
Right.
But then there's good debt. This is using borrowed money, often called other people's money, or OPM, strategically, leveraging it to acquire assets that are expected to generate more income than the cost of the debt.
Like borrowing for a rental property.
Exactly. Or a loan to expand a profitable business. It's about understanding financial leverage, using debt as a tool to potentially multiply your asset base much faster than you could with just your own cash. It's using debt to grow, not just to consume.
Smart leverage. Got it. And this whole section kind of culminates in lesson 25, which just boils it down. Cash flow is king. Why is that mantra more important than, say, having a really high salary or an impressive-looking net worth on paper?
Because, the source argues, your true financial strength isn't just your gross income, or even your total assets minus liabilities on a spreadsheet. It's about how much actual cash flows into your pocket consistently after all the bills and expenses are paid.
The net amount you have left.
Precisely. You could earn a massive salary but have huge expenses and loan payments. Your actual cash flow might be small, or even negative. Or you could have a high net worth tied up in illiquid assets. Rich Dad's focus is always on optimizing that net cash flow, because that's the money you can actually use, reinvest, and build true financial freedom with.
That's a crucial distinction. Okay, let's shift gears now to the third big bucket of lessons here. This is all about action, continuous learning, and really challenging the norms. It starts strong with lesson 6, the importance of taking risks. Now, my traditional side says play it safe, but Rich Dad encouraged mistakes. How do you balance that?
Yeah, it's not about being reckless. He draws a clear line between gambling and taking calculated risks.
Calculated risks, okay.
Success in building wealth, according to this source, rarely comes from playing it perfectly safe all the time. It comes from stepping out, trying things, making calculated moves, and crucially learning from the times you stumble or fail.
So failure isn't the end.
Not at all. Poor Dad's fear of failure often led to inaction, to paralysis. Rich Dad saw mistakes as, well, tuition, invaluable lessons on the path to figuring things out. It's about learning to fail forward.
I like that, fail forward.
Yeah.
And that attitude seems to extend into your career path too. Lesson 7, work to learn, not to earn. Why would someone prioritize learning a skill over just grabbing the biggest paycheck they can find?
Because the value, the real payoff, is in the compounding effect of knowledge and skills. Rich Dad pushed the idea of taking jobs specifically for what they could teach you.
What kind of skills?
Invaluable stuff like sales, communication, negotiation, leadership, understanding different business models from the inside. Even if the starting salary isn't amazing, because those skills accumulate, they make you more adaptable, more capable, more valuable in the long run. And ultimately, they give you a much better foundation for building your own assets and ventures later on.
That makes sense. Long-term thinking. Okay, so once you are earning, lesson 9 hits with a really key discipline. Pay yourself first. This feels totally backward to a lot of people, right? You get paid, you pay your bills.
It does feel counterintuitive. The natural instinct is bills first, then see what's left for saving or investing.
So why flip it? Why is this discipline so powerful?
Rich Dad insisted on it, setting aside money for your investments, for your assets before you pay your rent, your car payment, anything else.
That sounds stressful.
It can be, but that pressure is part of the point. It forces discipline. It makes building your wealth non-negotiable. You're prioritizing your financial future. It trains you essentially to manage your expenses and lifestyle around your savings and investment goals instead of the other way around where saving gets whatever crumbs are left over, if any.
That's a real mental shift, a game changer. Okay, and speaking of financial strategies, lesson 10 says, taxes are a tool, not a trap. Now, taxes are something most people feel pretty powerless about. Just got to pay them.
Right. That's the common feeling, yeah. Resignation.
So how does Rich Dad suggest the wealthy approach taxes differently?
Well, according to the source, the wealthy don't just pay taxes passively, they actively understand the tax code. They see it as a set of rules, incentives, and structures, and they use it legally to their advantage.
Through what?
Through things like setting up corporations, using specific types of investment accounts, understanding depreciation, deductions. They essentially learn the rules of the game as written by the government, and they play by those rules to minimize their tax burden legally. It's about knowing the incentives the system offers for investors and business owners, which are often different from those for employees.
Understanding the rule book. Okay. And speaking of traps, lesson 11 is blunt. The rat race is a trap. That whole cycle. Get up, go to work, pay bills, maybe buy some stuff, repeat. It's the reality for so many. What's the fundamental escape hatch Rich Dad points to?
The escape route fundamentally involves building assets, actively acquiring things that generate passive income, and through that, gradually, deliberately refusing to depend solely on that single paycheck for your survival.
Breaking the dependency cycle.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from that treadmill where you need the next paycheck just to cover last month's expenses. You escape by creating income streams that aren't tied 100% to you showing up and trading your time.
So how do you get smart enough to do all this? Lesson 12 says learning never stops. Rich Dad was apparently always reading, going to seminars, networking. What's the real ROI on that continuous learning?
The source really stresses that knowledge compounds just like money. The more you learn about finance, about investing strategies, about business, about markets, the more opportunities you start to see.
Things you wouldn't have noticed before.
Precisely, and you're better equipped to evaluate those opportunities and make smarter decisions. It's an ongoing growth process, and that directly translates into better financial outcomes over time.
Makes sense. And as you learn, you have to act. Lesson 13 advises, investing is a skill you must build. It's easy to feel intimidated by investing, like it's only for experts or it's just gambling. What's his advice for someone starting out, or maybe someone who's tried and gotten burned?
The core message is, don't let fear paralyze you. Don't wait for the perfect moment or until you know everything, because you never will. Start small.
Just get in the game.
Yes, but intelligently. Learn from your mistakes because you will make some. View investing not as hitting the jackpot, but as developing a skill. It involves strategy, ongoing education, and practice. It gets better with time and experience. Treat it like learning any other complex skill.
That feels more manageable, and it sounds like you don't have to figure it all out yourself, which is a relief. Lesson 14. Surround yourself with experts. How important is building that team?
Oh, extremely important in Rich Dad's view. He stressed that the wealthy don't try to be experts in everything. They hire and leverage the specialized wisdom of others.
Like who?
Good accountants, experienced lawyers, knowledgeable financial advisors, maybe brokers or property managers, specialists. The idea is understand your own strengths, but know when and how to bring in people who know more than you do about specific complex areas.
Smart delegation.
It frees up your time and mental energy to focus on the bigger picture, on what you do best.
Okay. Now, another bit of conventional wisdom Rich Dad challenged hard was the idea of job security. Lesson 16 states it plainly. Let go of job security. That's tough for people to hear, especially when a stable job feels like the bedrock. Why did he see it as an illusion?
His belief was that relying solely on one job, one employer, actually makes you incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable how?
To things totally outside your control. Market downturns, your company getting acquired, industry shifts, automation, you name it. Your security depends entirely on someone else's decisions and circumstances.
So what's the alternative?
True security, in his view, comes from building multiple streams of income. Ideally, income from assets you control, from businesses you own. It's about diversifying your income sources so that if one stream dries up, you're not financially devastated. It builds resilience.
Diversification of income, not just investments.
Okay.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture of wealth creation, Lesson 17 highlights being a problem solver. This sounds like classic entrepreneurship.
It absolutely is. At its core, entrepreneurs make money by identifying problems that people have and creating solutions for them.
Finding needs and filling them.
Exactly. The more significant the problem you solve, or the more effectively you solve it, the more value you bring to the marketplace. And generally, the more wealth you can attract in return. It's about shifting focus from just, what job can I get, to what problems can I solve?
That's a powerful perspective shift. And thinking about getting the right education for all this, Lesson 19 circles back to something we touched on. School doesn't teach wealth. Now again, this can be hard to swallow, especially for high achievers academically. What specific, crucial gaps does Rich Dad argue traditional schooling leaves?
He really challenges that deep-seated assumption that good grades automatically lead to financial success.
Yeah, we're told that all the time.
Right. But he argues that traditional schools are primarily designed to teach you how to be a good employee. They rarely teach you the practicalities of building assets, managing cash flow effectively, understanding tax strategy from an owner's perspective, or developing an entrepreneurial mindset.
So Rich Dad's wisdom is meant to fill those gaps.
That's exactly the idea, filling those critical knowledge gaps left by the conventional education system.
Okay, and this leads naturally into Lesson 21. Build businesses, not just careers. What's the fundamental difference there, and why does one tend to lead towards freedom while the other often keeps you, well, employed?
A career typically means you have a job. You trade your time, your skills, your effort directly for a paycheck. Your income is usually tied to your direct involvement.
Makes sense.
A business, on the other hand, especially one built well, offers the potential for true freedom because it's about creating systems. Systems for marketing, sales, operations, delivery, systems that can function and generate revenue even when you, the owner, aren't physically present working in the business every hour.
Creating something scalable.
Exactly. Scalability, leverage using other people's time, other people's money, established processes. That's where the potential for significant wealth and time freedom lies, according to Rich Dad.
Got it. And for all these big endeavors, building assets, building businesses, Lesson 22 is just critical. Think long term. Rich Dad wasn't about get rich quick. Why are patience, planning, and discipline so central to his whole philosophy?
Yeah, the source is really clear on this. Real sustainable wealth isn't built overnight. It's not about chasing fads or trying to time the market perfectly.
No shortcuts.
Pretty much. It requires a disciplined, strategic, long-term approach. Consistent investing, letting compounding work its magic over decades, reinvesting profits, patiently building those assets and systems. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That requires a certain temperament, doesn't it?
It does, resisting the urge for instant results.
Okay. And it sounds like you need to get your financial house in order before big money even shows up. Lesson 23 stresses, be financially literate before you get rich. Why is getting the knowledge first so critical?
Because getting rich without knowing how to actually manage that money is a recipe for losing it just as fast.
Right, like the lottery winner stories.
Exactly those stories. Suddenly having a lot of money without the foundational understanding of budgeting, investing, taxes, asset protection, it often leads to poor decisions and the wealth disappearing. Rich Dad's advice was clear. Learn how money works, how to keep it, and how to make it grow before you acquire large sums. Build the container before you try to fill it.
Build the container first. I like that. Okay, and finally, lesson 24 offers a bit of hope and maybe some urgency too. Start young, but it's never too late. Now, obviously, starting early gives you that amazing power of compounding.
Huge advantage, no doubt. Time is your greatest asset when starting young.
But what's the core message here for someone listening right now who maybe feels like, ugh, I'm behind, I've missed the boat?
The message is fundamentally optimistic. The door to gaining financial wisdom, to changing your trajectory, it never truly slams shut. It opens the moment you commit. Commit to learning, and maybe more importantly, commit to taking action, even small actions. While starting early is undeniably beneficial, the power of these principles, these lessons we've discussed, they're applicable at any age. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
The second best time is now.
Exactly. The best time to start building your financial future is always right now.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening right now? These 25 lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, they're not just, a random checklist of financial tips.
No, it's more integrated than that.
Yeah, it really represents a potential paradigm shift, a whole new way of looking at things. It's not just about what you do with money, but fundamentally how you think about it. And that shift in thinking, that's presented as the real key to unlocking financial freedom.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these lessons are really practical tools. Tools for challenging that conventional thinking we talked about, for questioning the assumptions you might hold, and ultimately for taking decisive control of your own financial path. Taking control.
Yeah, they push for a mindset of active learning, strategic action, calculated risk-taking, and really understanding how money, assets, liabilities, systems, how it all actually works. It gives you the conceptual tools to kind of rewrite your own financial story.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to take away from this deep dive. As you reflect on everything we've unpacked, which one of these 25 lessons really resonates with you the most, right here, right now, in your current financial journey?
That's a good reflection point.
And maybe more importantly, what's one single concrete action, it doesn't have to be huge, but one specific step you could take, say, this week, to start applying that particular lesson? Maybe it's just questioning an old belief about debt like we discussed, or maybe it's as simple as starting to track your cash flow more carefully. The power, as they say, is in the application.